Hello, John.
Hello, Oliver.
And today we're going to talk about a Dublin street character, and his name was Zosimus. I think he was born in 1794. I think he was born, and he used to be around. He lived around the Liberties initially, but you want to tell us more about him?
Yes, he traded under Zosimus because Zosimus was a historical figure, and so I believe he was blind, but he was from a place called Fumley Lane, which actually I know because I worked for a company there in that area who had a pet food factory in Mill Street, a meat and bone meal factory around in Corn Market, and the offices were in a place called Blackpits, which is just down the road. So small areas would have a name, but so the offices for the pet foods and for the main part of the factory, which was called O'Keefe's meat and bone meal. They produced meat and bone meal, which was used for animal feeds. To bring up the protein content, and was usually allied with soya beans, which is also a protein that brings up as well. If meat and bone meal was scarce, well then they'd be using soya. So the two prices of them were aligned, and if soya went up in price, meat and bone meal went up in price. So it was subject to that kind of thing. And but the opposite was in Blackpits, and around the corner was Fumley Lane. This is where Zosimus, or his real name was Michael Morden. And that area produced characters. But we'll talk about Zosimus. Mm-hmm. Zosimus was married, and apparently just living in a room. People just didn't have all the accommodation that they have now, which they don't seem to appreciate, with bathrooms and this, that and the other. And maybe TV and bedrooms for children to look at. I think that's overdone now. But anyways, Zosimus, as he was known as, lived in one room, and he was married. Matter of fact, he was married twice. His first wife died and he married another one. But he was a character that went down the town, and his most famous recitation was the lengthy St. Mary, and was written by the Bishop of Raphoe. We're going back now to the Bishop of Raphoe probably wrote that in the 1700s when we had persecution of the Catholic faith in this country. So he probably had to be in hiding as well. But he wrote something about Saint Mary, and it was she was in the desert for 47 years, and so this was a famous one. Dr. Anthony Coyle was his name. She wandered in the desert in Egypt for 47 until discovered by the pious Zosimus. So he quoted that facility. He quoted that episode, and he normally dressed in a long coat, befitting kind of a poet and a storyteller as he was. And he had a strong Dublin accent, which is still going about.
It says that among his competitors on the streets were John MacBride, the hedge poet, and J.M. Brady, author of humorous songs, The Blind Fiddler. So he had a few competitors.
He did, and he did. So there were. This was street entertainment because you had theatres, but I think more the well-to-do went to the theatres. So the people was entertained by these ones, and I think perhaps a hat would be passed around, and this is the way they lived because there wouldn't have been any other support for people like what we're used to nowadays. So this was a time when you had to live by your wits. Yeah. And Zosimus was matter of fact, people wrote stories about him and books, and apparently there was a publication. He was written about by a book by Joseph Tully of McGlashan and Gill in 1871. So he made a name for himself 100 years, if you like, before it. And the publication was 1 and 6pence and post free because post had been invented. And the celebrated Dublin street rhymer and reciter by Horatio Nelson, Zosimus' best known song, The Finding of Moses. He had a song about Moses, and when I was young there used to be a saying, Moses supposes as Froses. So we had this same kind of attitude as Zosimus. And of course, when I worked, we worked in the office was in Blackpits, and around the corner was Fumley Lane, and we had a worker living there, lived in Fumley Lane, and he was a frequent visitor to the Lyceum premises that was there, which I think was established hundreds of years. Now, different owners and all the rest of it, I don't know whether they're descendants or what, but that was there for donkey's years. And one of our friends' employees used to spend his time in there, and he lived in Fumley Lane where Zosimus lived. And so the blind balladee was blind, and before commencing his celebrated recitation, he would pause and seem absorbed in a deep reverie, as if waiting for the favouring, for the flame of the muse, and collecting his thoughts, says the memoir. So he conducted himself as if he was on the stage. He was on the street, but people was entertained. Also in Fumley Lane in my time, there was a fella called Johnny Fortycoats.
Yeah, I know that. I heard of him.
Aye, well, he was a character as well, and I think he did some recitations. He was well known, and all the rest of it. And I think Zosimus, by the way, had a big stick with a knob at the end of it. Now, I don't know what he had that for, but perhaps it was like a kind of a, what would I call it, like a crozier or something. Perhaps it identified him as being somebody important. It was a kind of a special type of stick. And then the long coat. And I presume he probably had long hair. Probably barbers were scarce. So he looked the part, and so did the other recitations, the people in that area. Fumley Lane and around that area is famous. Now, where O'Keefe's was, and I worked there was often a very strong smell, and for miles around. And older folk always maintained they never got a cold. That smell kept any colds at bay. But younger people didn't like it.
We could do it now with the coronavirus.
We could. Keep the virus away. But in any event, there was a meeting called, and management asked me to address them because I tried to introduce a bit of humour. So there was older folk and younger folk there, and it was a fairly lively affair. But actually was humorous, not unlike the history of that place. The younger ones eventually come around. I asked them the question, have you or your children got colds lately? And apparently they couldn't agree that they had colds, but they just didn't like the smell when they opened their window to let a bit of fresh air in. And on a very windy day, the smell of O'Keefe's came in the door. I'll give you a little story about O'Keefe's now. They're gone. A lot of other companies in the country. They're gone. There was over 150 people working between the two of them. Wait and hear. Guess what's there where O'Keefe's was now, and it must be very much refurbished? Teeling's Whisky. So they're producing whisky there now, and as a matter of fact, when I was travelling abroad, I got a sample of whisky and a few bottles. Now, I had to pay for them in the duty free, and an invite to visit their brewery in Cornmarket, which I presume is where O'Keefe's was, and must have been very much refurbished. So I'm looking forward now in due course to paying a visit to that. I hope there's no restrictions with this COVID, because I'll be able to sample perhaps a beer. And I believe there's another one I was told about when I was down in Wexford. I forget now what that is, but there's also I'll tell you where it was. We're told about Slane. There's a brewery. There's a whisky brewery there now where Lord Mount Charles, his lordship, lives, and he's always has his hand out for something that comes in handy. So he get permission to some American company to produce whisky there. I think it's Beam, John Beam, kind of a Christian name, but probably going a couple of 100 years. But they have a brewery there, and I believe you can visit it and take a sample of it.
Very good. I was just back to Zosimus for a second. Zosimus had some friends called, they were funny names, Peg the Man, okay? Fat Mary and Cantering Jack, they were his three pals. I mean, Peg the Man, I mean, it's not exactly politically
It's not,
correct.
no, but I mean, but they had, everybody had nicknames them times.
Well, they had humour.
Oh, they had. And so the word would spread that they would be about. Now, they wouldn't be in the same area because they all had their pitches. I shouldn't wonder if Zosimus was at the bottom of Grafton Street, because that was a great meeting place for people.
It was, yeah.
So I'd say he'd be there. Now, the other one could be down bottom of Trinity Street or somewhere near Dame Street. But they all would have their pitches because it's like the theatres.
He used to hang around Rory O'Moore Bridge. Where is it?
Rory O'Moore Bridge. I wonder, what bridge was
It
that called?
joins Ellis Quay with Walting Street.
Ellis Quay. Well, that'd be further down somewhere. Ellis Quay.
Joins Ellis Quay with Watling Street.
Watling Street.
The streets I've never heard of. Where are they going?
Well, I know them, and now I'm just... I'd say it was down near the Halfpenny Bridge. That might have been called that at that time.
Yeah.
I have a feeling it's around, because Ellis would be around there, I think. You see, I would have known all those streets because I was passing them for years. And I knew them all.
There isn't many streets that John Malone doesn't know.
Well, I knew double like the palm of my hand, but now not with the dual carriageways and that. I wouldn't be able to get the talent out to the shopping centre if you paid me. Because at one time when I was going to a hotel there at the roundabout as you're going on the motorway Dublin 7 to go to Cork or Limerick or wherever else, Waterford. I passed the hotel where I was supposed to stay overnight. At about 2:15, I was expecting to get there at 2:30 and have plenty of time to prepare for a meeting that was happening that night, in which I might be contributing my own little bit to. Because I missed it, I was knocking about trying to get to it for the next hour and a half, and I had to sort of ring them up and get one of their reservation ladies to come, and that I could follow her to how to get to it. With all the roundabouts, I could not get back to it. I had passed it. So it was 4 o'clock by the time I got in, me after being there at 2:15. So I was kind of red-faced by the time that come about.
There you go. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much.